exploring the twisted rib mesh stitch, a reversible lace stitch pattern in the lace ladder family like the mesh rib stitch from the last video. It's an easy 3-stitch, 1-row repeat that works well with variegated yarn, which can be tricky, especially for reversible stitch patterns. First, we'll learn the stitches required for this pattern, and then work the stitch pattern. At the end, I'll show you a close-up of the twisted rib mesh scarf I'm wearing, and I'll share some comments about variegated yarn in general. If you're new to knitting, check out my Learn to Knit, the ABCs in Cotton series, for the basics. They're linked in the description below. So let's knit! I've knit a few rows in garter stitch and 1 row of purls using a round polypropylene yarn so we can see the stitch definition better. The first 2 stitches required for this stitch pattern are the knit stitch and the yarn over. The knit stitch is the most common stitch and yarn over is the most common increase. The Western Standard knitwise is to enter the old stitch from the left. The last stitch is knit 2 together with a twist. The basic knit 2 together is considered a right-leaning decrease because the left stitch lies on top of the right stitch. Both stitches are open knit-looking stitches because they are worked knitwise. The interesting twisted look of this stitch pattern is a result of working the 2 stitches through the back loop, which is purlwise, or from the right. The right stitch is on top now, which causes the stitch to lean left. Rather than lying open and stacked, knit 2 together through the back loop turns the stitches so they look like loops. The closed loops turn the stitches just enough so the bottom stitch can be seen under the top stitch. Note that this is different from a standard left-leaning decrease, which I like to work slip knitwise to change the orientation of the stitches on the needle, and then knit 2 together through the back loop. You can see it's a mirror image of the standard knit 2 together, that is with open stitches. Because the knit 2 together through the back loop, and SSK replace 2 existing stitches with just 1 new stitch, the total number of stitches on the needle is decreased. Now that we have the stitches mastered, let's put them together into the stitch pattern. I'll use variegated yarn this time so we can see the effect right away. This has a short color change, and more on that later. I'm using a crochet cast-on, 3 stitches per pattern repeat plus 2 selvage stitches. 12 stitches for 4 repeats plus 2 selvage is 14 stitches in total. The last stitch is the loop on the crochet hook. You can see how nice the crochet cast-on looks with variegated yarn. This is because each new stitch is created from the same section of yarn rather than 2 different sections, like a long-tail cast-on, for example. For a matching selvage, I'm slipping the first stitch purlwise with yarn in front. This selvage works well with variegated yarn for the same reason as the crochet cast-on. The stitch pattern is yarn over, knit 2 together through the back loop, knit 1. Isn't that simple and elegant? Yarn over, knit 2 together through the back loop, knit 1. The full effect of the loft and hand feel, and especially the variegated yarn, comes out after a few rows. Notice how the twisted stitches change the look of the normal knit 2 together completely. As we turn to start the next row, you can see the customary double purl bump of the knit 2 together through the back loop from the previous row. When you're working the row, the knit 2 together through the back loop twists the stitches as we saw before, and the yarn over is extended upwards by the knit stitch. So the purl bump ends up inside the fabric. The knit into the yarn over and the following yarn over creates the lace ladder. For a cast-off, you can match the crochet cast-on by simply knitting in pattern, then slipping the right stitch over the left stitch on the right needle. Here's the twisted rib mesh scarf. The size of the color changes are irregular, also with patches in between, and it still looks great on both sides and lies flat. I've used slightly larger needles for this size of yarn because I wanted the stitches to be a bit looser, and also because the yarn is fuzzy, and I wanted a nice loft to the fabric. Normally, I keep knitting until I run out of yarn, but in this case I stopped at the last section where I thought the ends would look nice next to each other. Managing the colors at the start and end of projects can be an issue with long color-changing variegated yarn, but I prefer it to short color changes. You can see in these swatches how variegated yarn can have unexpected looks, some not quite as appealing as others. In general, variegated yarns that have strongly contrasting colors or shades in adjacent sections and/or very short sections for each color tend to look chopped up, no matter what stitch pattern you use. You can also get striping or pooling issues, and rows of different color purl bumps are just not attractive. For variegated yarns, I prefer yarn with longer sections of the same color, which will create self-striping fabric, and, if I can find it, very slow color changes. For example, this rainbow shawl. I do like how the twisted mesh rib stitch looks with lots of different variegated yarns. Let me know in the comments if you have variegated yarn in your stash that's been just waiting for the twisted mesh rib stitch. The next video will be on the brioche stitch, also called patent steak. We'll explore knitting brioche knits and brioche purls, knitting it flat and in the round. So pick up your knitting and create something awesome. I'll do my best to respond to comments, and I'd love to hear about your favorite reversible knitting pattern. Also feel free to like this video and subscribe to my channel for more awesome reversible knitting. For those of you still here, the last few years I've been working hard to find simple ways to feel better, what I call my daily well-being practices. This is not medical advice, I'm just sharing what works for me. Today's daily well-being practice is about hydrotherapy. For sure, the most fun is going to the spa, and I indulge myself once a year or so. I love the rain shower. A bit cool, I can feel my anxiety being drenched and washed away. Then a dip in the hot tub. Any remaining stress is melted and dissolved. I don't just passively enjoy the rain shower and hot tub. I actively visualize the bad leaving and being filled up with good feelings. On a daily basis, I can get this same effect at home by staying in the shower just 5 minutes longer to set up for the day. If I'm feeling brave, then turning down the heat of the shower at the end, as cold as I can take it, is supposed to be good for our skin, wake us up, and even relieve inflammation. So let the water work for you, physically and mentally.